Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by a couple other lifetime Longhorns. My man CJ Vogel, the young prodigy, and also a national champion, Marcus Myers, joining us as well. We'll get into our pre-spring position previews. We'll continue that on the defensive side of things, and we're in the secondary now, and we'll start with the cornerbacks and nickels. We'll talk about that here on Texas Football. All right, gentlemen, it's one of the positions, obviously, that I played as close to my heart, cornerbacks and nickels. So let's talk about it. Longhorns did bring in one cornerback / nickel, if you want to throw him out there as that, Bo Maskell via the transfer portal to add to this group. You had a youth movement of sorts last year. Grayson Littleton started as a true freshman at the nickel spot. Cade Phillips ended up supplanting Jalen Gilbo out there at the corner spot. So you had two true freshmen starting there at the cornerback position and the nickel position. We'll start with you, Marcus. Overall, how do you expect this group to shape up, and who are kind of your top four guys that are going to be in this rotation of cornerbacks and nickels for Texas?
Yeah, absolutely, Rod. Well, like you said, you know this position well and the best, so we're going to lean heavily on a lot of your expertise here. But when you talk about what this position kind of is shaping up to be, I really like it. Right, it's a bit of a mixture of that youth with some elements of guys that have some real experience. I mean, Grayson Littleton really came on early and kind of maintained his performance. I continue to go back just to watching it, right there, being in the shoe when he was, matched up with Jeremiah Smith multiple times and, by no means looked like he was out of place. So, he would certainly be in that top four for me. Obviously, Cade Phillips, the way he came on towards the end of the year, a bit rangier guy that, makes some plays on the ball. And I think will likely have, more of an aggressive style under Will Muschamp. You also mentioned Bo Maskell coming in, and that's somebody that had a little bit of experience already under Mark Orfe. So, when you have situations like that, a guy that already has some insight into, the type of football character that you talk so much about, Rod. So I think he would be in there as well. And, I guess it kind of that fourth spot, it kind of depends on how they choose to play some of this stuff. My hope is that Kobe Black would be, someone that's pretty high up in that element, because again, he just kind of is a different type of a player and is aggressive on the ball. And I think all around hoping to see, that top four make more plays on the ball than we saw maybe in the 2025 season.
I think you're dead on there. Is more plays on the football is what you should expect, probably, is probably the best way to put it in my eyes. And I know there were some storylines and themes with the secondary a year ago, more times than not towards the back end. It was talking about coverage busts or why things weren't clicking there. But one positive note that you could really hang your hat on at the end of the day was, hey, your freshman led you in pass breakups and pass defended and playing the football, right? Grayson Littleton, Cade Phillips. And we didn't even see Cade Phillips all too much in towards the last 3 weeks of the year, right? But to be in that conversation is one of the big reasons why I'm so optimistic about this group going into 2026 is they make plays on the football. They get eyes back on the quarterback. They locate where the football is, and then they fight through hands. And I know that Texas has had guys, I wouldn't necessarily say full units, but guys have done that in the past, right? Jade was fantastic at it. I know a big gripe over the previous years was they're there. Where is now the connection between being in position to putting the ball on the ground or taking the football away? This group specifically, I think it's going to be a big strength this fall.
Yeah, you're right, because that's what the young bucks showed, right? Because the young guys, they don't necessarily have the experience and the wisdom just yet. Some of them, their games are pretty mature, but they still got a lot to learn about, the fundamentals, about route concepts, and just about overall the kind of the savvy, the kind of you talked about Jade Barron, like he played the game as like a savvy vet. And him and McCuba having them back there, you felt the experience they had, right? Coverage bust. They were always in the right place. And I think with these young guys, they're not always in the right place. I mean, Grayson Littleton was actually out of position a lot. So was a young kid, but they were aggressive in their playmaking ability. And the game will slow down for them. There's no question this season. And they're going to be in even better position to make plays on the football. To your point, I'm a big fan of havoc rate. And that's basically how many splash plays you can make as a defender. And Cade Phillips, with only 250-something snaps, I mean, he was over 3% havoc rate, and Grayson Lowton over 2%. By the way, that's good. I call them 2%ers. You got a 2%er or higher, you got a dude out there making plays, and he's one of those guys. So I think both of those guys are playmakers. They do a great job, I think, in man coverage. I think that's what Texas want to go to more of, guys. I got the numbers here. Sark wanted them to be more aggressive, but they were in man coverage. Texas was up to 28% man coverage rate. And they were around 18% in 2024. So they increased their man coverage rate. I think when you get bodies, the long levered athletes like Jerry's always talking about with Cade Phillips, they're going to put him in more press man situationally. I think that's where he'll excel and being able to play sticky coverage. And you brought it up, Marcus, in that Ohio State game. I mean, Grayson Lowton showed you he can play sticky coverage against the best of the best. And that was some really sticky coverage against Ohio State. Speaking of Ohio State, throwing it out there, Bo Masco, his highest graded game by Pro Football Focus, his best game of the season versus Ohio State.
There you go.
He was their highest graded defender versus the run, highest graded defender as a tackler, and it was his highest graded game versus a Power 4 team. He had an 85 in that game, highest coverage grade of the season too at 83. So he showed up and showed out versus the best. All right, so I feel like Bo Masco is a guy that can win a starting job. I think there will be a competition between he and Kobe Black coming back. But for my notes, guys, the last 4 years, you can go back to the last 5, but last 4 years, you've had 4 corners with at least 200 snaps. So they're gonna lock in on the 4, and then you've had 3, which is kind of how they utilize the nickel there, with 400 to 500 snaps or more. So your top 4, I think we all feel confident that it'll be Grayson Littleton in that group. It'll be Cade Phillips in that group. It'll be Bo Masco in that group and Kobe Black in that group. Do we feel like there anybody that could crack that we're not anticipating that could be in that rotation? Anybody else in among this group that could be in there? We'll talk about all the guys, but we've mainly focused on the top 4. That's what it's going to be. Anybody think that a Rowan Roberson or a young Samari Matthews, who I love, by the way. I did predict Cade Phillips would play as a freshman and later on in the season. If I had to predict that about any of these corners, it would be a young Samari Matthews, man. He's legit. He's but a Wardell Mack or someone like that. CJ, I'll throw it to you. Do you think any of these younger guys, Warren Roberson, Wardell Mack, potentially could make an impact?
Yeah, I think we'll see Smoke Matthews in 2026. And to your point, Rod, I've been told separately, look, he looks really good physically. You watch him just kind of walk through the halls and you kind of make a double take and you say, whoa, okay, he plays corner, right? A lot of these guys that come in as freshman corners, they're not necessarily guys that lived in the weight room. And you watch him kind of walk and you see him in strength and conditioning and you say, okay, he did live in the weight room. So that's a plus. He's obviously is a plus athlete as well. You turn on the tape and he's physical. He'll play the run. He'll play the football. He lines up with what Texas wants to do in my eyes. What Sark has been wanting to do ultimately is play that physical press man on the outside, which aligns with a physical front 7 and create the havoc pressure that you're talking about, Rod. So he's a guy for me. But Texas fought so hard to keep Warren Roberson and Wardell Mack.
Yep.
They have to have a role for these guys that's extending beyond just special teams. And I know we're going to dive into that a little bit later, but I think for all of these positions, it's going to be a pretty heated competition all the way through spring.
Yeah. You nailed it, CJ. I was thinking about Samari. I think he goes by Smoke, Smoke Matthews. And, to your point too, one of the things I always like to do is just see, all right, when the guys are first getting into workouts and the media team, who, by the way, I don't know if there's a better one in the country than the Texas, media team for all the different sports, but especially football. When they start kind of releasing photos, well, they got a photo of Samari Matthews pushing a sled. And he does not look like a freshman, the guy is well put together, and it's not one of those that looks like, okay, just because he's flexing, pushing, a sled, with some aggression, like it doesn't seem like it's a eye fake, right? Like the young man looks like he's really well put together. I was trying to find it so I didn't butcher it earlier, but I think he was like Mr. Carolina or something like that, Mr. North Carolina. So literally the best player in the state in the sport, right, was a corner. So I think you have to have high hopes for him. But to CJ's point, you also, would hope that the light comes on for the guys that were potentially considering testing the water. And ultimately, Texas was able to get them to, stay in the fold in Warren Robeson and Wardell Mack. You would hope that, all right, you hear people talking about these freshmen that are coming along. Even Hayward Howard, right, has some skill set to him. That light's a fire under you. And I imagine, Rod, as guys were brought in over the years, and, we were always told, like, the coaches are recruiting to replace us, right?
Yeah.
So I can imagine, especially in those DB rooms that you were in, once they get loaded, when it's your time, that you have some limited opportunities. When you're a younger guy, you got to take advantage of them. But when you're an older guy, you got to make sure that these young bucks know, who's the sheriff in town, so to speak. So I'm hoping that you get a mixture of all of that with, the remaining guys that you just mentioned.
That's a great point, Marcus. Like, I remember being in that DB room and them bringing in, young Nathan Basher and young Mike Griff and Mike Huff and young bucks. And, listen, I knew they were going to be great players. And I told them all, y'all going to be great players. Y'all ain't taking my job, though. I'm going to be on this field, just so y'all know. Y'all can find other ways on this field. It ain't going to be taking my job. But that's how you boost the competition in the room. Right. They coming to take jobs. They coming to take snaps and playing time. As an older player, it should push you to be the best player you could be. So I do like that. And I'm with you. I think Smart Matthew's that guy. But Warren Robeson, I'll give him props. Best performance we've seen from Warren Robeson was in that game, that bowl game versus Michigan. Yeah. And I think he got a lot of confidence from that. And my big issues with him was he always played almost insecure. Where he didn't have that confidence. Now that he's got his best game so far as Longhorn to build on, what is that going to do for him? You got a new, defensive coordinator who loves a physical presence at corner, and Ron Robeson is physical. There ain't no doubt about that. He likes to bring the hammer. So I'm hoping that Warren Robeson can now, as a player, take his game to a level. And Kobe Black, I think it's an interesting situation for Kobe Black because Bo Masco is coming in. A lot of people believe, including myself, Bo Masco is going to end up, being that winning one of those corner spots. Kobe Black should be a not so fast guy, not so fast, my friend. All right, you know what I mean? I had my best showing of the season late in the season too. Now I'm playing with a lot of confidence. And they brought, he can't, I know there was talk about potentially Kobe Black might want to leave, and he's back. And if I'm Kobe Black, I look at this as a challenge. So he's a guy I can't wait to see where he ends up. And if he ends up, winning more playing time, a lot of people believe Bo Masco is going to end up, of course, winning that job. I think there are some guaranteed starters. I think Cade Phillips and Grayson Littleton, guaranteed starter among those group. And I do think, Kobe Black, who knows? I think Kobe Black and Bo Masco are going to be those other two guys, but who knows how that, that playing time ends up being distributed. Let me ask you guys this. You guys think that the nickel position, do you think there's any way or any possibility that there's a change? Not Grayson Littleton not being on the field, he'll be there, but potentially maybe playing a corner spot and moving someone else in to play the nickel spot. I know there's been some conversation about that. Maybe we'll see them experiment with it a little bit in spring. But what are your thoughts, CJ, about how much do you put into the maybe it's a conspiracy theory or at least some of the conversation that, hey, maybe they'll move Grayson Littleton out to cornerback and let someone else man the nickel?
Yeah, obviously, we all like what Grayson Littleton brought to the field. And it's funny, I was rewatching a couple of the games, and for whatever reason, I went back through the Kentucky game. And that wasn't fun. But in that game, I was reminded that they did use Grayson Littleton as an outside corner. And that was one of the reasons for that was to get bigger, right? We saw a lot of 3-down defensive linemen against Kentucky who basically owned all the time of possession. They just wanted to grind out, plays and basically just give me 5 minutes of nothing to watch every offensive possession. But as a result, your corner was Grayson Littleton on the outside. So he had at least dipped his toe in playing on the outside. And I think it's going to be situationally addressed. Because if you get back into a situation like that, do we see a bigger nickel, a Jelani McDonald spin down perhaps? We'll have to wait and see. Of course, I think that's all dependent upon what that safety room looks like. It's tough to just move him around back down towards the box. But point is, I like the idea of him being an outside guy, right? Because, to be fair, he's not the biggest guy. As a result, he's not the most physical guy. He plays much larger than he is from his stature, but to have an extra guy in the box that's probably a little taller, probably a little thicker, it might be beneficial. But point is, if he is your guy at the nickel spot in coverage, I know he's going to be A1 sound. He's going to be really, really good.
Yeah. No, I like that idea. And I mean, everybody's looking at, the Seattle Seahawks and Nick Eman-Rory, who's 6'3", playing basically got that big nickel position. He's just a freak. Now, you don't get freaks like that. But Jelani McDonald can play the big nickel, and we saw him do it at times. And I think it should be something you have in, and I know Muschamp will, that you have in your playbook. That you can deploy the big nickel and just bump him outside the corner. I'll say this before we wrap up. A young Hayward Howard, I'll just say this. I don't know where the development is going for the young man, but he's got some freaky tools. We're talking about freaky nickels. What is he, 6'3", somewhere around there, 6'3"? That's just throwing it out. And he's listed as a corner, so he can cover. And man, let's see if he can hit. And then in a couple of years, you're a freaky nickel on your hands. Just throwing it out there about Hayward Howard. Just go throw it out there, Marcus.
It's interesting. I did want to ask you both this, and this is just more a hypothetical. This isn't necessarily like drum beats of anything, but I was thinking back to a lot of the squads we were on, Rod, and there was a lot of cross training done. We used to have guys that would bump back to safety and vice versa. Do you see any candidates, for something like that out of this group?
I'll say that I'll give Jerry Hamilton credit. He's been hypothesizing you could do it with Kobe Black for about a year now. And he think Kobe Black at safety, that physical presence and frame with a guy that can cover, that may fit. And I've seen schematically them do it with Grayson Littleton. When they do their inverted three high look,
when
they roll to it, they just put him at safety. And he's usually one of the safeties that's dropping back deep. And they'll use either Taft. They were using Taft, or Jelani McDonald was that inverted defender.
Gotcha.
Let me throw another name at you as well, because I like that, Rod. When we talk about the nickel spot, obviously, beyond Jelani, Wardell Mack is going to be probably that second guy again, right? Right behind Grayson Littleton. Yep. Beyond him, and I think it's a perfect fit, personally, Yaheem Riley, the freshman coming in from Austin Anderson.
Okay.
You go watch his tape. He is a physical guy. I'd say sneakily taller than what he might look like. He's going to add to his frame and probably be in the 205, 210 range. Yeah. But he can move. And obviously he works with BAM Performance, Bernard Blake down here in Austin. Texas fans obviously very familiar with his work. Jade Barron, Andrew Makuba, Michael Taff, right? Plenty of others on this Texas roster. He's been working with him for two or 3 years. Now he's on campus. I look at him as, if he doesn't stick at safety immediately, put him at nickel. I think it's a great fit.
I like that. I'm all about cross training too. I always say multiplicity is the future of football. As many of those guys you can cross train as possible. I would do it not only to manufacture depth, but I do it to find solutions to potential problems you're going to be presented. So CJ, good stuff. I agree with that one, especially in the secondary. All right, good stuff, guys. Great as always. Thank you, Marcus, for the expertise. CJ, appreciate all of your nuggets as well. And thanks to each and every one of you out there for watching and for listening. For CJ and for Marcus, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em.
Okay.